How many are in the class?
About 8.
8? Why so small a class?
It's an elective.
Ah! Good, good. My family had a combination farm and hotel in Connecticut. It was in June. I was on the property, which is called Grand Lake Lodge, Connecticut, and was sitting outside waiting, and there was a radio playing, and the announcement was made: South Korea has been invaded by the North.
On Sunday, June 25th, Communist forces attacked the Republic of Korea. This attack has made it clear beyond all doubt that the international communist movement is willing to use armed invasion to conquer independent nations. An act of aggression such as this, it creates a very real danger to the security of all free nations.
So the Korean War itself was a war in the context of the Cold War. The Cold War, of course, starts in 1945 at the end of World War II, and it was really about communism and capitalism and the fate of the world. And what they decided to do was actually split the peninsula into 2 countries, North Korea and South Korea. North Korea would be supported by the USSR, South Korea would be supported by the USA, and they would be split at the 38th parallel, which is basically a demilitarized zone where neither side could go over into the other country.
So the war was going on, and we were not doing that well, that is, our armed forces. That alone was leading to a very serious fighting.
So this was the first military action, real military action of the Cold War. Most of the Cold War up until this point had been fought through, for instance, like economic means, by America borrowing, lending money to countries to prevent the spread of communism, or building alliances like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in 1949. But this was the first time that America sent in troops in a military engagement to actually fight a war to spread communism.
I was interested in thinking, hey, I'm supposed to start college, graduate school. I lost 2 roommates while I had started. Why? Because we needed all the people we had eligible to fight. I got the feeling that I should be maybe going there myself. And as I thought more and more about it, I also thought, maybe I could get an experience I could find myself. What do I want to do with my life? First of all, anyone going into military service goes into what they call basic training. I went first to an induction center, okay, which was in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, with all other guys who were either drafted or enlisted. Getting some briefing as to what your next step was, and the next step was within a few days, some of us got into buses, and we ended up on Long Island, where our basic training center was, New Jersey. We're assigned to barracks, which were buildings that could hold about, I think, 30 men. Rows and rows and rows of huge amount of buildings, and we're assigned to beds, assigned to equipment, issued rifles, and began a very organized procedure. So you were being trained in specific procedures and doing what was requested as requested. You shift gears mentally, some faster than others. The second assistant, or whatever he was, to the sergeant, had fought. And in Korea, he had been in combat, and at one point, whether trying to scare us or whether trying to get us to realize that this was a very, very serious activity going on all the way in a foreign country, pulled up his jacket and showed us a scar across his side and part of his abdomen. He had been bayoneted by a Korean. You could tell that when we looked and saw him that it was for real. And then psychologically hit, hey, you know, that could have been you. That sticks in my mind. Now, when we were finished with our basic training, we were told the military higher-ups would decide where to put you. I ended up going to school in Maryland, and from Maryland, when I finished, I went to Germany. What did I do in Germany? I was not an infantryman. I was a so-called CIC counterintelligence clerk assigned to an engineer battalion. A battalion is a group of about 400 or 500 men, meaning that these were people who built or broke down equipment, bridges. Okay. We would put all our engineering battalions next to the Rhine River and destroyed anything along the line that would stop Russian tanks from getting easily across the river to attack us, to slow them up. It was a defensive idea in case the Russians took the Korean War as a place to take over in Europe. It didn't happen, luckily, so I never saw combat. We never blew up the bridges, but we were there. You were aware, at least I was, that fighting had taken place in and around this town, or bombing. There were still buildings that had been blown up, either bombed or so on. I felt upset for the fact that we lost so many guys, that the South Koreans suffered terribly, terribly. Starvation, mass killings, and so on. I was sitting across from the table from a youngest looking guy who actually was much older than he looked. And he came up with a story that he was driving a truck in Germany. So the guy talking to me, I said, well, you know, what was your experience? He said, I had many of them, man. He said, I ended up in the infantry finally. He said, but I'll never forget my time driving. I said, why? He said, we were going up to the front lines, Patton's army, going into Germany. He said, I was sitting with two other guys squashed in the seats. I didn't drive, he said. We were going to load and unload this stuff. He said, And suddenly, shots hit the side of the bus. And he said, and the next thing I knew, the guy next to me keeled over. He had been shot and killed. He said, and there I sat till we got to where we were going. We want to have peace. We want one Korea. No, that has not happened. I want to feel when I get back to the States, or when we would win and it would stop, if my two former roommates were alive and back. That was about it. Yeah.
Were they?
Yeah.
Your roommates? Good.
They made it. I learned to be more independent. I learned to work under and with many people from different backgrounds, different religions, different belief systems, okay? It broadened me. It made me more knowledgeable, more aware, more appreciative of differences. You pick up, I said it before, but in a way, you picked up other experiences, more knowledge, other people, other foods, other cultures, other problems, other outstanding, beautiful experiences, whatever they are, buildings, landscape, added something that are part of my memory. Like we all have memory banks, my bank is filled with experiences.